Dr. Naomi Wolf, känd från Trumps tidigare chefstrateg Steve Bannons podcast, har gått igenom 450 000 dokument från vaccintillverkaren Pfizer. Hon har avslöjat omfattande skador och korruption kring Pfizer-vaccinen, något som kulminerade med misstroendeomröstningen mot EU-ordföranden Ursula von der Leyen. Tillsammans med Kristin Andersson från Alternativ för Tyskland deltog hon i en konferens i Europaparlamentet om Pfizer-dokumenten. Riks tog kontakt med dem för att höra hur folket kan kräva ansvar från makthavarna. What were the most shocking things you found?
Probably two most shocking things are, number one, Pfizer knew that the vaccine didn't work to stop COVID. And in fact, they found out a month after the rollout that it was a failure. And the third most common side effect in the Pfizer documents is COVID, getting vaccinated. They had to hide the bodies, not file death reports for 8 vaccinated people who died with COVID in order to allow the government of the US and other governments to make the false claim that you're more likely to die or be hospitalized without the vaccine than with it. The truth is the opposite, and they knew that. The second most shocking thing is that the Pfizer documents really center on destroying human reproduction in a 360-degree attack on sperm, ovaries, fallopian tubes, eggs, placenta, babies in utero, breast milk. It is just obsessively focused on, disrupting the menstrual cycle, on creating infertility. And indeed, now 3 or 4 years after the rollout, unfortunately, we have a 13 to 20% drop in live births in Western countries, in North America, as well as 1 million missing babies in Europe as a result.
How could this be allowed to happen? Because they knew about many of the dangerous effects. Who is behind this and what is the motive?
Well, Pfizer certainly knew and the FDA knew, so I hope that these good people at the European Parliament demand interior documents from the European Medicines Agency, I think is what it's called, the equivalent of the FDA, because it's certain that senior people in Europe knew as well. But there was a lot of lying and to the public. And I think it's very interesting that President Trump tweeted 2 days ago that Pfizer had presented data to him that falsified essentially, the outcome of the injection, said it was a great success and didn't have serious side effects. And President Trump is calling on Pfizer to release that data to the public that they presented to him. I think even he's waking up to how horrifically Pfizer deceived him and the rest of the world as a result.
You have criticized the mass media reporting on this, or the lack of mass media reporting, rather. You have a long experience as a journalist. What has gone wrong?
Well, so much. A lot of the interests that profit from injecting people with this deadly and sterilizing injection funded the media. And so the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation spent millions of dollars to, quote, overcome vaccine hesitancy with entities like the BBC, The Guardian, U.S. publications, and then the CARES Act in our country, a $1 billion act, deployed more millions and millions and millions to news outlets, even influencers, little TikTok influencers, little dance troupes in Queens, New York, to encourage people to get vaccinated, especially marginalized populations, low-income populations, populations of color. So they turned the media into, and also, by the way, churches and synagogues, which is horrible. They turned the media into their employees, essentially. And lastly, in our country, in the U.S., pharmaceuticals fund direct advertising to viewers. So about 70% of the budget of an entity like CNN is pharma advertising. And so, of course, consciously or not, CNN isn't going to investigate or report on crimes committed by their funders. So all of that happened, but also you had actual censorship of critics from the government, for instance, in my country and in Europe, I was censored, as it turns out, by the Biden administration. There have been 2 settlements from Twitter, now X, and now Google, to, apologize to me for violating my First Amendment rights. But it was the Biden administration that set that in motion unlawfully. And in Europe, well, there's horrific draconian suppression of free speech in Britain. I mentioned Ofcom, the media watchdog, which closed down Mark Stein's show and cost him tens of thousands of pounds in legal fees because he had me on, not because what we reported was wrong, it was correct, but because it upset people, according to Ofcom. So that's going to be a disincentive to other news outlets to touch the subject. And people in Europe, there's censorship in Europe as well, and the European Union is trying more and more to censor what people can see online and the information they can get online using made-up terms like misinformation and malinformation and so on that didn't even used to exist in our language 20 years ago.
What role did EU play in this, and what can we do to hold them accountable?
Well, the EU unfortunately played, how shall I put this, a despicable role? Because Ursula von der Leyen, the president of the EU Commission, she negotiated with her buddy, Albert Bourla, who is the CEO of Pfizer, behind, via text messages, private messages, a multi-billion euro contract for 4.6 billion doses of mRNA injections. I mean, this is half the planet, right? And we've heard that the massive side effects, adverse events that took place with the mRNA injection, the best case scenario was worthless. Worst case scenario were harmful. In a lot of cases, they were even deadly. And as we have just heard from Dr. Naomi Wolf, they knew. Pfizer knew everything. It's all in the Pfizer Papers, which were, court-ordered to be released. So they knew, and they lied to the people. And this is the criminal energy behind that. I mean, it's off the scales, and it is a big crime that was committed here, and the ones responsible need to be held accountable, and they need to be brought in front of a court.
Well, as I said from the stage, it's very difficult for Europeans to do anything as long as they have this system of transnational governance, because they can't even enact their own laws or, without intervention from the people who committed the crimes, essentially. And they can't pass better laws without the intervention of the people who committed the crimes. So sovereignty is number one. I think it's very important for Europeans to look at their own laws and constitutions, their own foundational documents, because you do have laws that guarantee that people can't experiment on your bodies, that you have the right to free speech, that you have the right to free association. Basic human rights laws are, have been in Europe for 60 years, since the end of the Second World War. And the Nuremberg Code applies to Europe and Britain as well as to the US, that, no one can coerce you to take an experimental medication or intervention. So I think that this system of governance for the post-war period into the present has kind of lulled Europeans intentionally, and British people, when they were part of this, to sleep about how to legislate and how to change legislation, how to stop bad legislation, what their rights are, what their legal rights are. And people need to wake up from that torpor, because I've just shown that the people who tried to put you to sleep are the ones who tried to murder you and sterilize you and disable you. And I do think sovereignty is incredibly important, because when you've got your own country and just citizens in your country voting and being elected to your parliaments, you can pass better laws. But also people, as MEP Anderson said, people have to not comply. There was so much compliance in Europe. There still is. And in the United States, less maybe, but compliance is an invitation to tyrants to create more tyranny. And when there's mass resistance, it's much more difficult to do the kinds of things to populations that were done to Europeans from 2020 to the present.
What steps can be taken now that Ursula von der Leyen has survived the vote of confidence?
Well, it wasn't surprising that she would survive it because, unfortunately, a lot of MEPs, despite the fact that they are supposed to be representing the people and are supposed to act in their best interest, they are not doing that. On the contrary, I mean, they went all along. They subjected the people to these draconian measures of, restrictions, threatening the livelihoods. If you don't take the jab, you won't have a job, and whatever. At this point, the only conclusion I can arrive at is that all of the MEPs that supported that and that did not speak up and did not stand up for the people, they're nothing else. They're traitors, point blank. So where do we go from here? I will take a look at that, and I am considering pressing criminal charges because it is now all here. Pfizer knew about it. They lied. The only thing, and I asked that question, by the way, like 3 years ago in the COVID committee, we know someone lied, right? So now it's clear Pfizer lied. What we don't know is, did Pfizer lie to the government? Did the governments know? Did the EU Commission know what was going on with the mRNA injections? Or did they lie to the government? No, the other way around. Did they lie to the government and the government didn't even know and were pushing the mRNA injections because they didn't know? Or did Pfizer tell them and the EU Commission lied to the people? That is a question that we need to get to the bottom of. But point is, yes, a huge crime was committed here, and I will not tire until I have all the answers I want.
Thank you very much, Dr. Naomi Wolf.
Thank you so much.